What's going on, players? I'm Randy Ritchie. This is Women Wrestlers You Should Know, sponsored by Premier Pro Wrestling. So at the very least, please like and subscribe and help support Premier Pro Wrestling on the links in the description. Today we're honoring, a freaking goddess in the industry. I'm with Casey James, and it was his idea today to honor Elizabeth, Miss Elizabeth. Now I'm going to hand it over to Casey for a moment.
The First Lady of Wrestling, Miss Elizabeth. I just wanted to talk about her because, only if you grew up in the 80s and were a wrestling fan, will you ever really understand how over Miss Elizabeth was? Oh. Like I said, I was a Hogan fan. Everybody was. Anybody, he was, arguably one of the biggest stars in all of entertainment at that time.
Saying the prayers, taking
right.
the vitamins.
But, man, what a package. If there was a 1A or a 2 in WWF during that time period, it was Macho Man Randy Savage and Miss Elizabeth.
And to your point, I don't think Macho Man Savage would have been over.
No, I don't think so either. I don't think so either, man.
Yeah.
Even when he first came in as a heel, and she was technically a heel valet or manager, but she never worked as a heel, only because she was with Randy. But I just think because, man, Randy lived his shit, dude. Mm-hmm. Randy lived his gimmick, and they were legitimately man and wife.
Yep.
And they reached through the camera. There was an emotional attachment to the audience. That dynamic of the relationship between Miss Elizabeth and Macho Man Randy Savage. And they've tried it with other people, and they probably did it before, but I think they're on top of the mountain as far as male-female partnership, as far as a woman managing a male athlete.
And aside from that, like you just said, as the heel, yes, it was half a shoot, as Randy was very possessive.
Right,
and that's legendary.
And that was.
But then, when George the Animal Steel came in, who'd been a heel for how long? 30 years probably. He turns babyface and saves Liz from Randy. And then when George started to pass the torch, Randy was sorry. And then they got another run as Randy and Liz babyface.
Yeah. But just. What a classy woman.
Yes.
She's my favorite female. She wasn't a performer, but she's probably my favorite female, period, ever in the history of the wrestling business is Miss Elizabeth.
I'm going to go ahead and call her a performer, not a wrestler, but a performer. Because, man, those handful of promos that she did really tugged at the heartstrings.
Yeah, I know. She was.
And did you ever see that?
She didn't have to say much. It was just she was talk about
the pout.
Just the looks. I was gonna say just
beautiful.
Her sympathy that when Randy would take a heat, especially when he was a baby face, and even when he was a heel. The sympathy that she was, and she didn't overplay her hand.
No.
But just the concern in her eyes and on her face when Randy was in peril.
Oh.
That is, that's a 101 in wrestling psychology. Anybody can learn. Even male performers today could take a page out of Elizabeth's book as far as sympathy. You
know who kind of does, now that you mention it, and she really has gotten that push since she discovered it? Liv Morgan when she's selling. And she probably did take a page out of the Liz book, and that's the impact that she had on wrestling, period, man, woman, or beast,
But she was just so beloved, and you can't, like I said, unless you were a fan during that time period, you'll never really be able to truly appreciate how over Elizabeth was. She was Randy's equal, man. Even though, but it was just, I think there was just something about the dynamic of their relationship that just translated so well on camera.
Her poise.
Yeah, it was just something about it. It was because it was real. It was real. It was real. That the thing. I'm telling you, the closer you can play to the vest as far as believability is being able to. That's why the best characters. Gimmicks don't work, or characters don't work. Gimmicks work because that's just you crank up the dial to 10 or a 20.
11.
That's why. That's really what works in wrestling is that believability factor. It's usually just yourself, not trying to be something that you're not.
Yep.
It's being something that you are and just cranking up the the volume on it.
You to the 10th power. You know. Now WCW, they didn't know what to do with her. You know, and that was really where
They didn't know what to do with most people.
Yeah, exactly.
They were
the animals were running the zoo.
They're getting paid.
Yeah, the animals were running the zoo. There were a few times when I was doing R&B Security and WCW Security, I think under the R&B Security guys, Russo's fucking brainchild. I think we kidnapped Liz a couple of times or a time or two for some silliness, but it never got over. No one cared. And dealing with her on a personal level and something like that, she was so easygoing, easy to deal with. But to be honest with you, because like you said, I was such a mark for her in the 80s as a fan, I was intimidated to talk to her even though she was friendly. I was like, that's Elizabeth, man. You know?
And there was just something about it, because nobody in the 80s, nobody was doing it either. I mean, they were in WWE, but just, you know, like, that title tournament they had at WrestleMania 4 where Savage had to work 3 or 4 times.
Yeah.
Every time they came out, Savage had a new robe and Elizabeth had a new dress to match
And
that robe.
it.
Man, that was just something you had never seen before, you know,
Yeah.
and just... Man, it just fit them so well, you know? The Beauty and the Beast, because you had that crazy man, Randy Savage. Oh, yeah.
And the hair.
Who's a bit, yeah, I'm thinking I don't like it. Yeah,
And the crazy
And then,
eyes.
you know, you just had that calming factor in his corner, you know, like... It just, and he was so protective of
A
her.
Disney princess.
And that's why when Savage and Hogan finally they had their blow off, it worked so well.
Holy shit, it was
because
over Liz.
It was over jealous. Yeah, I see the lust in
Another
you.
run.
I see the lust in your eyes, Hulk Hogan. The luster.
Look
you
at
know,
that.
like
Think about that. How long was that run? Because that was another run.
well, they first. I mean, when Savage first came in, he did work with Hogan a little bit.
Yeah.
Before I think Savage was Intercontinental Champion, he worked with Hogan when Hogan had the heavyweight title.
Mm-hmm.
But then they had their real program was when they ended up teaming together. They worked that for a
Ooh, the
whole
Mega
year.
Powers.
Yeah, and then they split up, worked at Mania, and then they had another year run because they worked well into SummerSlam after Mania. That's when they brought in Zeus to team up. That's when Savage got Sherry, and that's when they brought in Zeus. So they kind of about 2 years out of that.
Isn't that amazing? All right, guys, we're talking about, you know, two of the hottest on the gates go, as far as the gates and merchandise sales go,
Yeah.
Randy Savage and Hulk Hogan. And one can't help but imagine how much the presence of Miss Elizabeth had to do with both of them getting over
I don't
so
think
much.
that was one of the biggest drawings besides WrestleMania 3, WrestleMania
Yeah.
5. They never quite in WWE's popularity, the apex was 87 with, you know, Hogan and Andre. But man, business was still good even until WrestleMania 5, and that was because of Savage and Hogan and that angle that they worked. And business was never quite the same until the late 90s when Austin blew up.
Yeah.
Like that was the last, like if you want to look at the barometer, the benchmark, the last time that they did big numbers at WrestleMania, because WrestleMania 5 was Hogan and Savage, and then it slowly started to go down after that. They tried Hogan and Warrior, then they tried, you know, like, but that was really the final big angle that they did during probably arguably the hottest run that they ever had as far as lengthwise was, you know, from 85 to like 1990.
Well, first thing is, I'm very surprised at how important Elizabeth is to you.
Yeah.
But the second thing is, do you know much about her passing?
I just know that she OD'd, right?
Yeah, you know, and that was really sad and out of the blue.
Yeah,
you know.
jeez, you never would have thought that.
No.
You never would have thought that.
And, you
That-
know-
I was shocked because, you know, you think Miss Elizabeth, I mean, I didn't know. I had no idea.
Yeah, I believe it was something to do with the heart in the middle of a meal when she was living with Lex Luger.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah,
And I know Lex Luger had some sort of legal trouble over it, but it didn't end up amounting to much. But I can't help but believe that affiliation had something to do with her passing. I don't think she was
And
happy.
she's buried in Elizabethtown, Kentucky, E-Town, Kentucky.
Where she's from.
That's where she's from. That's where Savage, I believe. I don't know if that was a town that
They were running.
Poffo ran, or when he was working in Memphis.
Poffo.
Okay, so Poffo ran
I
E-Town.
knew that.
But that was a town that we ran monthly in OVW.
Jeez.
Was Elizabethtown. That was one of the. I think it's still a regular town. I think they still run it monthly.
Wow.
Like that's one of. That's a good wrestling town, and that's where she's from.
Well, folks, again, this is Women Wrestlers You Should Know. You'll please note There's no YouTube ads or commercials here. So at the very least, please like and subscribe. This is being brought to you this way by Premier Pro Wrestling. So check out the links in the description to help support Premier Pro Wrestling. And once again, we are honored to honor Miss Elizabeth.